everyone, welcome back from my channel. It is CJ, this is CJ. We're sitting on the floor in my bedroom today. How fun for both of us. And I thought I could do a little video about books about being online. Myself, I'm a girl online. You are a person online. We're communing online right now. This is an area of literary fiction I love reading about because one, I think it's really hard to do it well. So when I do read something that's strong and portrays the experience of what it feels like to be a person online, to make community online, and to form an identity online, it really resonates with me as a contemporary kind of lad. And I think it's hard. So it's an interesting narrative to unravel, to include in books. I feel like authors who are writing fiction nowadays either ignore it completely if it's set in a contemporary setting, or they jumble it up. I have a stack of books today that I'm going to talk through. Some of them you've seen on my channel before, some you have not. I also, in my latest newsletter, plug for my newsletter, link in the bio, wrote about two of these books more in depth. Here's a stack. Before we get into it, all of the writers are women, which I think is interesting. Women do it better. Sorry to tell you, I feel like the internet is a space that's not super male dominated, despite tech being so male dominated. I don't know why that is. I haven't thought about that critically, but anyway, let's get into it. First up, I want to talk about The Shame by Michaela. This is a slight little novel that I haven't seen a lot of press for, and I am begging you to read it. This follows a woman named Alma who is an academic. Her husband's an academic as well. They live in upstate Vermont on this idyllic farm. They're homesteading. She's brewing kombucha. She is teaching her son Montessori schooling. They have wooden toys. She's also a children's illustrator in the meantime, okay? Like very cottagecore, off the grid, like urban fantasy dwelling. She finds herself more and more discontent with her everyday, especially as mothering and being a woman and the labor associated with like caring for her land and the upkeep of her house keeps building, and she kind of reaches a breaking point and a point of contention. Starts following a popular online social media Instagram like mommy account and becomes entrapped by her obsession with this other woman and her projections onto what she perceives her life is like. I think this book is so successful at really examining the daily witnessing of other people's lives and what that does to us psychologically, and how much of a construct we project onto other people based on limited information we can gather from them from the feed, right? Also just like a great framing of how capitalism is tied to motherhood and being a wife, and
Hello?
I'm filming a video.
About what?
About the internet.
About the internet?
Books about the internet. Can I keep
Books
going?
about the internet?
Yeah. Books that are very online.
You should just make one about the internet.
The history of the internet?
Just about it.
Okay. Anyway, it also has a great tie-in of how capitalism is tied to social media and how that affects our self-worth, and people are becoming product pages basically. Such a great debut novel filled with like really exact descriptions of digital longing and digital shame. I think this will resonate with a lot of people. Highly recommend it. Fake Accounts by Lauren Euler, a booktube darling. Oh, I think this book is actually sold out, which is kind of crazy. This follows a unnamed narrator who has found out her boyfriend is a alt-right secret online conspiracy theorist and is running a well-known Instagram account for it. I think this book is really observational at the root of it. It has the pretense of a typical narrative structure, and it even is self-referential and pokes fun at itself and other literary devices while you're reading it. But the thing that connected it so much to being online to me, besides the fact that a plot line literally is social media, like a social media persona account getting blown up is that observation. All of the people in the narrator's life are very coolly observed. She's constantly kind of critiquing and witnessing her surroundings both in real life and online very acutely, and the writing about that really fresh but also really realistic. There's a blurb on the back here that says experiment of social media realism. That is exactly how I would describe this novel as well. Super interesting, a lot of sharp digs and insights into the zeitgeist at large, and if you haven't read this yet, you absolutely should. I think Lauren Euler is going to be a big voice of our generation. This is a collection of poetry called God, I Feel Modern Tonight by Catherine Cohen. I love this funny, quirky, quippy little collection of poetry. I'm not a huge poetry lad, and I think I liked this because it was both like satirical and bold and funny, but kind of sentimental and devastating at the same time. It held a duality of ups and downs really well, I felt like. Just funny. It doesn't make any attempt to romanticize the mundane, stupid shit everyone does while scrolling on their phone. It talks, you know, kind of boldly and candidly about endless scrolling, the weird internet wormholes you can get yourself into. And I think it humanized social media platforms and kind of digitalness in a way that was really consumable and affecting at the same time. Was It Mariposa by Fiona Allison Duncan? This is probably one of the weirder novels I've ever read, put out by Soft Skull, so of course. I feel like they really have some unique and singular voices. This follows Fiona, and it chronicles her time living in LA in a roommate situation with a bunch of other people who've been put together to film a reality TV show. And the central questioning of this entire novel is the looking for the real. The characters are constantly contrasted against the fact that they're supposed to be filming for a reality TV show, and our narrator is also like a 20-something young woman who is trying to discern what friendships, relationships, self-identity in her life, like what has meaning, what has value, and what is the real. I think this was so smart at navigating kind of these more meta existential questions about identity and figuring out your shit when you're in your 20s, and also tying in art making and the economy and feminism and the internet at large and the identities we make for ourselves in the spaces we feel safe doing that in. So very weird, hard to describe. If you like a loopy love letter to LA and to friendship in all of its forms, I would pick this up. It's experimental, but I think it's really interesting. Now we have Glitch Feminism, which is a manifesto by Legacy Russell. This is interesting. It's hard to describe or critique a manifesto. There are definitely some things in this that I don't agree with. This is a pretty radical text that's claiming the divide between the digital and the real world is completely non-existent. I understand that on a theoretical level, but I also think it's dangerous. So take that with a grain of salt. Like, this is really online. It's really going there. It's using this metaphor as a glitch of like a blip, a mistake, something where data can't be rendered from it as a way to move through the world. So it's like mirroring this language and technological advances that we've gained from being in this digital age and making community online. It also pulls in a lot of working artists and art theory who are using internet culture as part of their praxis and examining the ways they are transforming and rejecting binaries of all kinds. Like, this is little Michaela, who, if you're not familiar with her, is a AI influencer. She's not real. She was made by developers and like genuinely has brand deals. Thinking about the avatar, thinking about performance, thinking about the self in this stage of capitalism and being able to literally create a fake person and monetize them. I've worked with little Michaela before. I'm in the advertising industry, and I used to work at an agency that worked with Adidas a lot, and we worked with her. Like, we sent shoes and she wore them in a digital shoot. Like, she was rendered her 3D model and put them on. She's not real. So I don't know, it's interesting. This is a radical text, like I said. It's very theoretical and wild, but was an interesting, like, heavy-handed dose of what the internet and community you make there means for some people. And I think you can extract meaning out of it. I think that's like a general thread of something that I like about all of these books. Nothing is vilifying the internet. Nothing is telling you that it's bad for you. It's just like acknowledging that it's a state of being now, and it's an inevitability, and it's using it as a resource and looking at the positives and the negatives of it. So that's glitch feminism. Lastly, No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. I recently read this. Another booktube darling. She's popular, she's everywhere. This is a novel in 2 parts. It is fragmentary in form. As you can see, there's a lot of tiny little fragments that make up the entirety of this novel. The first part is about an unnamed narrator who becomes famous online for tweeting something really silly. I think it's "Can Dogs Be Twins?" And she is starting to have a following and make her living and her livelihood off of appearances on panels that are talking about social media and its impact. First half is exhausting, it's funny, it's sad, it's definitely reads like an endless manic Twitter scroll, and I think that was really effective of kind of just getting completely thrown into a really succinct time capsule of what it's like to be online and like engaging in all of this world-ending devastating news, but also the dumb shit at the same time. Second half totally flips the narrative on the head. It's still told in a fragmentary way, but our narrator essentially has to go home and deal with a family trauma. She goes home, I feel like her sense of identity and how obsessed she was about being in the portal, being online, starts to right size as she sees that there is a divide between online and real life, and the consequences of missing out on her real life are more apparent to her than they were before. Again, doesn't vilify the internet. I mean, she goes back online through it, but I think it results in a more balanced perspective. That's it, lads. Those are my books. Let me know if there's anything else I should add to this list. I've also read the Cyborg Manifesto by Donna something when I was in college. I am interested in the more theory side of this, so if you have recommendations on that too, let me know. Another good video to watch is Rebecca's. I'll link it down below. She just did a video similar about books about being online. So if you want to be in an online wormhole, there you go. Okay, bye, love you, see you later.